Damn, give me the word.
Uh, uh, Confidence.
Yes, thank you. Damn, give me the word.
As a matter of fact, I kind of hadn't even thought of it, but so you know, before COVID had hit and we knew it was happening, um, um, I was just kind of starting to like cook food for myself, like in a more in a more real way, you know. And then COVID happened, and I had a lot of free time, obviously, like everybody else. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and just get as into this as I can because I love food and I love food
Mhm.
that's different. I like trying different things, and um,
Did you make sushi yet? Because I know you love sushi.
I did actually.
What?
Yeah, we made some sushi rice, and then we just did nigiri. We didn't do anything crazy. We tried to do rolls, but sushi rice is like the most important part of sushi, really. As long as the fish is good, the sushi rice being the right stickiness essentially
Yeah,
is the
that's
most
a
important thing. It's so we it was a little too sticky, and we tried rolling it together, and it was just like it was a kind of a mess. But doing just straight up nigiri or sashimi worked perfectly fine. We have a great place up near me that does really good high grade sushi fish, but that was something I never would have thought to do or even considered trying until now, really, or more recently. But
Mhm.
when I was living in a different house at the time when 2020 happened. I just like to refer to it as 2020. And I started cooking a little bit, looked up a couple of recipes, and from there I was like, man, I really like to cook. This is a lot of fun.
Mhm.
And not only is it fun, I think that if you have any interest at all in trying new foods or eating food that isn't just pizza or something, and which, by the way, you can make great homemade pizza. It's not that hard to do, actually. Nowadays, too, though, there's so much music out there that is so it's so centered on the event of it and the presentation of it, and the music part of it sometimes is sort of secondary, um, and it's
Give
more
me an
about the
example.
lights.
Give me an example of
Oh,
somebody who's doing it where
I would
actually there
hate
are a
to
lot of
I would hate
I
to crap on somebody,
yeah,
you know?
I actually have yeah, I have 3 in my I have a few in my head already. I know what you
Okay, no,
mean.
you know what? I'll give you an example. Kiss is and they've been doing that for a long time, though, but Kiss is an example of a band that it's really less about how good the music is or how great the story is or how, you know, than it is about
Mhm.
it's the show you're going to see more so. And you sing along, but and they know that, and they don't care about it. And that's the nice thing is they don't care, and that's fine.
So
That's how you
yeah,
should.
because they're still authentic in that in a way because
Yeah.
they are yeah, I see what I see what
Yeah,
you're saying.
Gene Simmons, like, is probably more proud of the fact that he marketed that band better than any band's ever been marketed than he really is even about the
Oh
music
gosh.
that they made, because he talks about it all the time, which is interesting.
AC/DC 2.2. Mhm.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
would definitely agree with that. A lot like, tons of stage presence, you know, and with
Mhm.
AC/DC, and Kiss was like I mean, like, they were different human beings. I mean, they looked like wrestlers from WWF came out on stage and started, you know, playing rock music, and then there was fireworks and all this stuff, and that's what you went there to see, I guess, you know? So, I bet I would say yes. Definitely helped with confidence. You know, I remember the first time I went on stage at an open mic. I was not old enough to be in the bar because we have to be 21 here. So
Mhm.
I was like 18 or 19, and my mom took me to a place that she knew had an open mic, and she knew the owner, and she's like, "Hey, he's not old enough, but he just wants to play open mic." And the guy's like, "Yeah, no problem." So I went up and I went there several times, and that it's in itself definitely helped build confidence. But something else that happened when I was much younger, right when I was first starting off, that not everybody gets an opportunity to have, and I've been super lucky that this did happen, is when I went on to this open mic, it was like a full band was there, and they were just going to let me play by myself because that's all I knew how to do. But I played a couple tunes, and a couple of the guys came and like, "Would you mind if we sat in with you?" And I just heard them play, and they were amazing, a really good blues band. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that'd be great." And then they started walking up, and I immediately was like, "Oh, shit, what have I agreed to?" Because, like, I'm no good at this point, and they're really good. But they every time I came from then on, they would come and sit in with at least a couple of songs with me, and that in and of itself really helped make me feel very comfortable because I was being accepted by a group of very accomplished musicians very quickly, even though I really wasn't, you know, I had still had million. I still have a ton to learn, but I didn't have a clue what I was doing then. But they didn't have to do that, and we had a really good time that night. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm an alcoholic because I keep mentioning times I've been drinking, but you know, we were in such an alien situation that we were like, okay, well, let's start playing and we'll sip some whiskey. And we just kept sipping whiskey and kept playing. And eventually that whiskey was gone. And by the end of that show, I think we were probably pretty warm. I'd say pretty heated, pretty good and hot inside.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, but it was actually a lot of fun. And then it did make the idea of being able to continue that way and a little more approachable. And it wasn't like you get the first one out of the way and you're like, okay, we can do this.
Hmm. Hmm.
Cheers.
Damn, that's. I so can't drink. I think this is what I'm most afraid of. If I would meet you guys and like if I have one moonshine or whatever, I probably would be drunk immediately.
I I love
So
I love that
so
you started with moonshine there. That's fantastic because that's some serious stuff. So my dad played music all the time and down in the basement, and he played a lot of classical, not classical music, but he played a classical guitar downstairs a lot. His basement was kind of his little place that he would go to, relax or whatever. And I'd hear him play all the time, and I just loved hearing music come out of something that wasn't a speaker. I heard it come out of the actual instrument itself. And even before that, I think I always wanted to entertain people in some way. But I think part of that is because, at least musically, writing, it's like therapy a bit. So rewind again, I guess. Had no idea I was going to try to play music for a living until I was probably in my early 20s. Got a guitar when I was about 16, 17 years old. My dad's like, I'll get you a guitar, but you've got to learn how to play it. So I'm like, okay. I will. And he taught me some chords. And then I just kind of started trying to figure out how to play the dang thing after that. And I'd say around 1920, I started thinking about maybe I want to write my own stuff and started doing that. And then shortly after, I mean, it was very quick, honestly. I mean, between 17 and then 21, I'm now doing gigs. One of the cool things about music is that unlike some other performance arts, you can start playing and making some money at it like very quickly if you spend time, you know, being good at learning how to do it. If you can perform well enough and you can play well enough, you can start making some money doing it very quickly. There's just a lot more opportunity to go somewhere and perform, and then somebody be like, yeah, I would like you to come back and we'll
word of mouth, probably.
yeah. So yeah, that's the weird thing. It kind of just started happening, and all of a sudden, I'm like, well, I guess I want to keep doing this, like, and I want to do this a lot. And then I was like, I want to do this for a job. I think this seems a lot more fun than anything else I had done working before, and I had jobs
Oh,
between the maybe not 20, but a lot of jobs that I just worked for a while and was like, appreciate the time. I'm gonna be heading out in 2 weeks. I just nothing else seemed like I just I couldn't stay anywhere for very long.
I was thinking right now when when you got this first guitar,
Uh,
was there even YouTube then back then, like where you
uh,
could teach yourself like how
I
to videos or anything? How did you?
Yeah, I don't think there was YouTube yet, and if there was, it was very new at the time because this would have been if I was 16 or 17, this would be 20 years ago. So I don't think there was any YouTube. What I was using was tabs, which would just be a bunch of it's like 6 lines on a screen, and then they would show you what finger you're supposed to put on each line, and that would kind of explain to you, like
Mhm.
where your fingers were meant to be. And then shortly after that, you'd get like chords, which would just have the song with all the words, and then the chord letter above about the spot you were supposed to start playing it in. So learning it that way, you kind of already had to know the song in your head, at least from a lyrical standpoint, so you knew where you were going. Because she never really learned how to read music. Um, I played saxophone like for a year in junior high, and I love saxophone, but it's just the application for it wasn't quite there for me at least. And so yeah, it was a little weird because you teach yourself how to play by learning stuff that you already know, you've heard before, but you have to know it because you've got no way to understand exactly where you're supposed to put the chords or shapes or tempo or speed. You just have to kind of know that already in that point. So there's a place for competitive, and then there's a place for casual, right? And it, if you're not having fun, why are you playing?
Hmm. What's the point, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're not playing this to be angry, right? We're not playing any of these games to make ourselves mad all the time.
Oh,
And
some people are.
insurgency Sandstorm, they have a functionality that's proximity chat, right? And when you're playing just in a random game with a bunch of people, I would say probably 75 to 80% of the time, it's just people using that proximity chat to just goof around. And that means that the enemy hears you when you're like coming into a room with a couple of guys. You're like, hello, anybody here? They hear you coming in, and then they'll talk. There'll be times when I come up to a building or something and I'm hearing a guy on my team and somebody on the other team talking back and forth to each other, and it gets really funny sometimes. And so that kind of opportunity to do stuff like that, like I feel like doing something where you kind of just go into a game with the idea of like a fun trolling aspect. The other thing too, I think, is that I would definitely, I'm happy that I do this now, but I would definitely wish that I had been more, not so worried about whether or not I was like putting on an appearance that looked acceptable. Like, you don't need to dress up for anything. I mean, you can if you want, and that's totally fine. But if you're playing music, particularly like the stuff that I've always liked to go listen to is just people who wear the same clothes they normally would when they're out, and they're just performing music at a very high level and doing it very honestly. And there's something about that kind of honesty in a group or a band or an individual artist that is, I don't know. I gravitate towards that. So, like I started sitting down when I play mostly because it's more comfortable. B, you play a little bit better because your hand's not all bent and stuff. I know people play their guitars. I'm trying to get like the angle. People play their guitars with the like down here and everything's all bent because it looks cool. But the reality is ergonomically, it's not the best way to play an instrument. It's just your hand works better if it's flat. If it's your wrist and your back of your hand are on a flat plane, it just everything works better. So I stopped thinking so much about do I look cool and more about does it sound good. And I think that's definitely a better way to go, even though it's still all opinion based.
Actually got there. Guys, you have to
Yeah.
say happy birthday. It was just three days ago.
It was on
I don't even,
Thursday. Yeah.
right? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Thank
No,
you.
I can't sing.
So I'm 37. I'm 37. Um, 37? Yeah, I'm 37. I was 36 last year, so I must be 37 this year. I
Mhm.
guess that's how math works most of the time. Unfortunately, the numbers go up as you get older, which I'm not a huge fan of. But
I'm still older than you. Fuck.
I, so I'll find a way to catch up. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. All right. I just stopped getting older from now on because then I will never reach 40.
God, that would be
Uh,
great, wouldn't it? Just
right.
to,
Right. I wait for you.
yeah, yeah. Let me put the pause button on. I'll be back
Right.
in a
Right.
few years.
Uh,
I had never really, and I'm not alone in this either, but I had never really even thought about live streaming music. I mean, we did maybe once or twice in the past a little short live stream of part of a show, but it was well before we knew anything about COVID. Um, and then, when March 2020 hit here, it took about a week for me to kind of because we also didn't know like how long this would last at first, but towards the end of that first month, I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do right now, and there's no way to be sure we like whether or not we are gonna get to do this, anytime soon. So it became real apparent quickly. I mean, I got to figure out some way to continue doing this. There was also, it wasn't like I could just, well, I can't play music. You really couldn't do anything else. So, um,
yeah. It's
you
not
know,
like you can't find a job within 2 weeks or whatever. I mean,
no,
they're,
nobody's hiring anyone there
yeah.
at that point either, because like they don't, it's just, so man, it was very, very scary, to not know, what whether or not I was going to be able to pay for my bills and keep the place I lived in the next 3 to 4 months after that point, because I didn't know. At that time, I just kind of really gotten myself in a position where I felt good financially because I was just more of an adult finally for the first time, which fortunately took me way too long to get there. But um, yeah, it was very strange. So streaming was just became it was built out of necessity. Necessity is the mother of all invention, even though it's not an invention. Obviously streaming was already around, but the idea of doing it that way, it went from like some people did it occasionally to everybody was trying to figure out a way to do that and try to, you know, find a way to.
I
It's
mean, you
like
have to
playing for
see
tips, you know.
streaming music is not like streaming a podcast.
No,
I mean, you want to have the quality and acoustic instruments, I bet, is very difficult to manage to get the quality on stream out there, right?
it really is. It's that was the first thing that I knew when I knew I was going to have to do this a little bit like that. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to, get I don't know how I'm gonna translate that because not only do I would have needed a lot of equipment that I didn't own already,
Hmm.
but then, even if you have equipment that makes it sound good, you still have to hope that your interface and then your internet and everything else is picked up correctly. Um, the sound on your end isn't always the only thing that comes into play when somebody's gonna hear, hopefully, the translation of what you're doing.
What were
So
some issues you went into there?
say again?
What were some issues you went into there? I mean, it's probably didn't go all that smooth from the beginning. So
No.
what were some issues you went into?
Well, the first issue, I immediately assumed, okay, I need to get like a microphone, a special kind of microphone, and do it that way. But I quickly found out, like, because I didn't have some of this other stuff, I didn't have a computer at that time. I had like a old crappy laptop. So I realized real quickly, okay, this isn't going to work because I don't have the appropriate things to make a microphone sound good. So I didn't even think about it, but I thought, oh, I guess I'll just use my phone. Turns out the phone microphone worked better than the microphone that I had that I bought did, which I blew my mind a little bit. Um, and then there was, yeah, you wouldn't expect that. It was like
No.
that was the last thing I thought would work better was the microphone on the phone. But once I found out that worked, I was like, okay, I can do some stuff from home now. Luckily, I was invited to some places where there wasn't anybody there, but like just a person that was running sound, and then there was a camera up, and then you'd come in and go away over there and sit down. Some stuff that was already set up, and that was really helpful. Being invited to do some things that were already kind of set. One thing is, I think the internet, has always been a place where it's very easy for people to kind of get carried away, obviously, and start, shooting off insults first instead of actually talking to one another. But COVID also, I think, probably heightened that because everybody was on. I mean, people were using the internet probably maybe too much or whatever you want to say. Social media, particularly, maybe using social media a little too much, even before that. But once COVID happened, everybody was on it all the time, and they felt like there was nothing else to do. So now you're pushing everybody into these spaces, and it's like there's no accountability either for uh, social media interactions with other people between yourself and another person. There's no accountability for any of that. And
What games are you covering? I think this is also an important question.
so I started. I had the idea to do it probably uh maybe a year before I started in August, but I wasn't sure how to do it. And I was watching some people already, maybe not as much people as I do now. But I've always been a gamer that plays a lot of games, and it's a part of my life. And I like to tell stories, obviously with music, and I like to hopefully be helpful as well in other parts of life. So this was like an opportunity maybe to like do all that within a setting that I'd never really tried to be a part of, but I was always kind of on the outside, always looking in. And I think watching Jack Frags was probably something that I did the most of, and I love that, he streams now. I don't think he streamed as much before as he does now, maybe, and that could be wrong with that, but he does a lot of stuff that was always, he did the video and then put it out, you know, and that was really appealing to me because that's kind of the way that's my process in my head anyways, is to get a bunch of things together and then edit them and try to make them into something. But I it allowed me opportunity to play games more a little bit, and then edit, which I also love to do, and
Mhm.
then try to be creative in the way that I present it, hopefully. So I kind of already had it in my head that I wanted to have this kind of old timey, goofy kind of music because I like old timey. I mean, I don't play. I play more blues funk music myself, but I like listening to gypsy jazz and to old school piano and stuff like that. And so I knew right away that I was like, I got to find something that sounds like that.
Mhm.
That was always going to be the thing. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.